to ESPN's projections, but acquiring McCollum wasn't just about adding scoring. They were getting a 9-year veteran who could be the steady professional voice that Zion and Brandon Ingram needed. And do you know how Zion Williamson welcomed him to the team? Well, he didn't, which prompted this response from JJ Redick.
Like, this just shows a complete lack of investment in your team. And again, look, I was his teammate. I can describe him as a detached teammate.
With that aside, the trade worked immediately. The Pelicans went on an absolute tear, making the playoffs for the first time in 4 years and nearly pulling off one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. Without Zion, who was out with a foot injury, the Pelicans took the top-seeded Phoenix Suns to 6 games in the first round. Brandon Ingram was absolutely cooking, averaging over 30 points in multiple games. CJ McCollum was hitting clutch shots. Herb Jones was shutting down all-stars. Jose Alvarado was creating chaos on defense. They won game 2 when Brandon Ingram dropped 37 points and nearly had a triple-double. They completely dominated game 4, winning 118-103, behind Ingram's 30 points and Jonas Valanciunas' 26 points and 15 rebounds. Chris Paul had to go perfect, literally 14 from 14 from the field with 33 points just to close them out in game 6. Think about that for a second. Without their best player, without their franchise cornerstone, the Pelicans nearly beat the team that represented the Western Conference in the NBA Finals that year. Imagine what they could have done with Zion Williamson. Now fast forward to the 2022 to 2023 season when Zion finally came back healthy. For a brief moment, we got to see what this team was supposed to look like, and it was absolutely terrifying for the rest of the league. In December of 2022, the New Orleans Pelicans went on a 7-game winning streak and sat alone at the top of the Western Conference at 18-8. This was the best start in franchise history throughout 26 games. Zion was averaging 30 points, 9.1 rebounds, and 5.3 assists while shooting an insane 67% from the field during that stretch. They beat the Phoenix Suns twice in 3 days, including an overtime thriller where Zion Williamson dropped 35 points. The same Suns team that had eliminated them in the playoffs the year before couldn't handle them when Zion was healthy and fully engaged. The roster construction was perfect. CJ McCollum was the veteran leader and secondary scorer. Brandon Ingram provided elite wing scoring and playmaking. Herb Jones was developing into one of the best two-way players in the league. Trey Murphy III was the perfect floor spacing complement to Zion's paint dominance. Jonas Valanciunas gave them size and rebounding. This wasn't just a collection of talent. These pieces fit together perfectly. McCollum's leadership and professionalism rubbed off on the younger players. His experience in big moments with Portland was invaluable. The spacing around Zion was optimal, giving him clear driving lanes to use his unmatched athleticism. NBA analysts were calling the Pelicans legitimate championship contenders. They had everything you need: a superstar in Zion, elite complementary pieces, veteran leadership, defensive versatility, and depth. When they added DeJounte Murray last year in 2024, they addressed their only real weakness at point guard. And originally, I said that the Pelicans won the trade, but here's the devastating part. We've barely seen this team at full strength. Injuries have decimated them year after year, and most of those injuries center around Zion's inability to stay healthy and in shape. This past season was supposed to be their championship run. They had Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and rookie sensation Yves Missi. Instead, they used 41 different starting lineups because of injuries and finished 21-61, the second worst record in franchise history. Zion played in 30 games, McCollum played in 56 games, Murray missed 51 games, Jones missed 62 games, Murphy was out for extended time. The team that was built to compete for championships couldn't even stay on the court together. David Griffin, who assembled this roster, watched from the stands as his carefully constructed championship team fell apart, and he was fired after the season. And now the organization is reportedly shopping Zion and McCollum because they can't justify keeping this group together when the centerpiece can't stay healthy. They already traded Brandon Ingram to the Toronto Raptors for peanuts on the dollar, and this is the tragedy of Zion Williamson's career. It's not just about his individual failure, it's about the championship opportunities that he's cost his teammates, the front office executives who lost their jobs trying to build around him, and the fans who believe they finally had something special. The 2022 playoff run showed what was possible. The 2022-23 hot start proved that the ceiling was real, but Zion Williamson's inability to maintain his health and conditioning conditioning has prevented this team from ever reaching its potential. Instead of competing for titles, they're talking about rebuilding around different players, and that's what makes this story so infuriating. This wasn't a situation where the team failed Zion. The team did everything right. They built perfectly around his strengths, surrounded him with the right personalities and skill sets, and created a championship caliber culture. But you can't win championships when your best player is only available for 45% of his games. And Zion Williamson even admitted himself that he struggled with his own focus on Gil's Arena.
Is it hard to diet at your age?
This is you. I'll be real. There are times when I will say, man, that's hard. It's hard, man.
But if you thought that the weight and injury issues were Zion Williamson's biggest problems, you haven't heard anything yet. In June of 2023, Zion announced that he and his girlfriend Akima were expecting their first child together. And it should have been a beautiful moment, a young man starting a family, ready to take the next step in his life. Instead, it unleashed absolute chaos. Enter Mariah Mills, an adult film actress who decided to blow up Zion's entire world on social media. Mills claimed that she has been in a secret relationship with Zion for 3 years, and she was not happy about this baby news. For months, Mills went on an absolute scorched earth campaign against Zion on Twitter and TikTok. She posted screenshots of alleged text messages and claimed that he was paying her monthly to keep their relationship quiet, and even shared photos of wire transfers she said he sent her. But somehow, it got way worse than that. Mills accused Zion Williamson of asking her to bring other women for three-ways, called him a sex addict, and made fun of his weight, telling him to get on a treadmill and lose weight. She even threatened to release tapes of them two together, which ultimately got her Twitter account suspended. The most shocking part, Mills claimed that she was pregnant with Zion Williamson's child, though she never actually had a baby. She kind of lost credibility when she fake tattooed Zion on her face and spent months dragging his name through the mud, while he, for the most part, stayed completely silent. But this would escalate. Fast forward to April of 2025, and Zion's personal life somehow got even messier. Akima Love, the mother of his daughter Azira, was arrested and charged with home invasion, aggravated assault, and stalking. According to police reports, Akima became jealous of another woman who was romantically involved with Zion Williamson. This is literally like a cycle. This is literally what happened to Mariah Mills 2 years ago. And I know there's gonna be a comment saying Mike saying literally with a check next to it, so stop that! According to police report, Akima became jealous of another woman who was romantically involved with Zion Williamson. In March of 2025, she allegedly egged the woman's house and sent threatening messages on Instagram saying, "Don't worry, it's going to be your head next when I drop this baby. Count your days." Bro, it's kind of crazy. They're actually having a Olympics out here, fighting over who gets to have Zion Williamson's next baby, threatening each other on text. But she doesn't even stop there. Akima, who was pregnant with what appears to be Zion's second child, used her key to enter the woman's home at 1 a.m. and physically attacked her. The victim suffered cuts to both eyes, had a lump on her head, scratches, and 4 of her fingernails were ripped off during the assault. Think about this situation for a second. Zion gave his baby mama a key to what appears to be another woman's house, and she used that access to commit a violent assault. Either Zion has incredibly poor judgment about the women in his life, or he's creating these messy situations by juggling multiple relationships without any regard for the consequences. And in my opinion, I think it's a little bit of both. Akima was arrested at Zion's home address. Her bond was set at $50,000, and she was ordered to stay away from the victim. But here's what's really wild. This incident happened while she was pregnant with what would be Zion's second child, meaning he's been involved with multiple women simultaneously while already having baby mama drama with the first one. And just when you thought this story couldn't get any crazier, May 30th, 2025 happened. A woman identified as Jane Doe filed a civil lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court accusing Zion Williamson of sexual assault and years of abuse, and the allegations are absolutely devastating. According to the lawsuit, the woman claims that she was in a dating relationship with Zion starting in 2018 when he was at Duke, and that the abuse continued until 2023. The lawsuit details 2 specific incidents of rape in 2020, both allegedly occurring at a Beverly Hills property that Zion had rented. The complaint alleges that Zion engaged in physical, emotional, and financial abuse, including strangulation with such force that she reasonably feared for her life and eventually lost consciousness multiple times. The lawsuit also claims he threatened to end her life and her family members on multiple occasions. Zion's attorney immediately fired back, calling the allegations categorically false and reckless, and claiming this is the plaintiff's third set of attorneys, suggesting this is financially motivated rather than a legitimate grievance. They also revealed that there have been previous extortion attempts that resulted in an arrest warrant being issued. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember Mariah Mills? She immediately contacted attorney Tony Busby about potentially filing her own lawsuit against Zion. Mills posted an emotional video saying she's received bashing, humiliation, slander, and threats over the past 3 years and hopes all victims get justice.
I really hope all the victims, including me, get justice. A lot of us don't deserve that. A lot of things have been swept under the rug for so long, you know, and I feel sorry to the victim. I've been through a lot of stuff with him. It's just shocking, you know?
Now, I understand if you'd question Mariah Mills' credibility, and I wouldn't blame you for doing so. Any woman that fake tattoos another man's name on her face would definitely have me reconsidering whether or not I trust her as well. But the thing is, it doesn't even matter. Whether these allegations are true or not, you have to admit, there is a pattern here, and that pattern is undeniable. Zion Williamson has surrounded himself with chaos, drama, and legal problems that have absolutely nothing to do with basketball. And if you're a basketball purist, you might be more interested in the next section of this video. What does this mean for Zion Williamson's basketball career and the New Orleans Pelicans organization? The team just endured their worst season in nearly 2 decades, finishing 21-61 and missing the playoffs by a mile. Zion played in just 30 games this season before being shut down with a back injury. That's the 4th time in 6 seasons that he's played in 30 games or fewer. For context, he's making $36.7 million this season and is owed approximately $126.5 million over the next 3 seasons. The New Orleans Pelicans have shown incredible patience with Zion, but that patience is clearly running thin. They fired their head of basketball operations, David Griffin, and hired Joe Dumars, who has been non-committal about Zion's future with the organization. According to multiple reports, the New Orleans Pelicans made their entire roster available for trades at the deadline this season, including Zion Williamson. While they ultimately decided to keep him and even had him represent the team at the draft lottery, league sources suggest that was more about trying to maintain his trade value than showing long-term commitment. ESPN's Tim McMahon reported that there's significant interest from other teams if Zion ever becomes available, but his value is obviously complicated by his injury history and off-court issues. Teams like the Detroit Pistons, Charlotte Hornets, and Miami Heat have been mentioned as potential landing spots, but any trade would have to account for his massive contract and medical red flags. Let me put Zion Williamson's situation into perspective by comparing him to other players who entered the league with similar hype and expectations. LeBron James came into the league at 18 years old with unprecedented expectations and media attention. The man was literally called the chosen one. Despite all that pressure, LeBron has played in over 1,400 regular season games and has been remarkably durable throughout his career. More importantly, LeBron understood early on that his off-court image and professionalism were just as important as his on-court performance. Kevin Durant dealt with injury issues early in his career, but he maintained his conditioning and professionalism throughout. Even during his worst injury periods, you never heard stories about KD refusing to listen to team nutritionists or conditioning coaches. Compare that to Zion, who has played just 45% of possible games in 6 seasons and continues to have the same conditioning and injury issues that plagued him as a rookie. The most telling difference is attitude and professionalism. You never heard about LeBron James or Kevin Durant having multiple baby mama situations, public feuds with adult film actresses, or civil lawsuits alleging serious crimes. LeBron James is a family man and Kevin Durant is single, and both of these players are never in the headlines for what's going on off the court in their personal lives. Zion Williamson had every advantage coming into the league. Generational talent, a max contract, contract, organizational support, and resources that most players could only dream of. But instead of dedicating himself to becoming the best player he could be, he's allowed distractions and poor decisions to derail what should have been a legendary career. And this is what makes Zion Williamson's situation so frustrating. When he's actually on the court and healthy, he's still absolutely dominant. This season, despite playing just 30 games, he averaged 24.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 5.3 assists while shooting 57.6% from the field, which is down from his previous numbers but is still pretty solid, even though it's the lowest mark of his career. Zion's combination of size, speed, and agility is still unlike anything we've seen in the NBA. He's averaging nearly 25 points per game in less than 29 minutes per game, which is insane efficiency. When he's locked in and healthy, he's one of the most unstoppable forces in basketball. But that's exactly what makes this so frustrating. We're watching a generational talent waste his prime years because he can't stay healthy, won't maintain his conditioning, and keeps getting involved in off-court drama that has nothing to do with basketball. Think about what Zion could have accomplished by now if he had taken his career seriously from day one. 6 years in, he should be competing for championships, not dealing with lawsuits and baby mama drama. He should be mentioned alongside Victor Wembanyama and Jason Tatum as the next generation of NBA stars, not as a cautionary tale about wasted potential. So where does Zion Williamson go from here? His contract becomes fully guaranteed on July 15, 2025, which means the Pelicans are essentially locked into paying him $197 million over the next 4 seasons unless they can find a trade partner willing to take on that risk. The legal situation with the Gray allegations will likely drag on for months or years, creating a constant distraction and potential PR nightmare for any team he's on. Even if the allegations are ultimately proven false, the damage to his reputation and marketability is already done. His relationship with the Pelicans organization appears to be hanging by a thread. While they publicly support him,
lawsuits are lawsuits. I mean, people can sue you for anything, and you can be innocent or not. It's just something that people...
League sources suggest that patience is running out. The team has invested 6 years and hundreds of millions of dollars in Zion, and they have virtually nothing to show for it. From a basketball perspective, Zion will be 25 years old at the start of next season, which should be the beginning of his prime years. But instead of entering his peak, he's coming off another injury-shortened season with more questions about his conditioning and commitment than ever before. Zion's situation is bigger than just one player's career. It represents a cautionary tale about how even the most gifted athletes can derail their own success through poor decision making and a lack of professionalism. The NBA has seen other talented players flame out due to off-court issues, but Zion's case is unique because of how public and messy everything has been. Social media has amplified every aspect of his personal drama, creating a level of scrutiny and distraction that previous generations of players never had to deal with. But that's not an excuse. If anything, modern players have more resources, support systems, and education about how to handle fame and fortune than ever before. Plus, they get paid significantly more than players did 20 years ago. The NBA provides players with financial advisors, media training, and life skills programs specifically designed to help them avoid these types of situations. Zion had every opportunity to learn from the mistakes of players who came before him, but instead he seems to have ignored all of the warning signs and red flags that his lifestyle and decision making would eventually catch up with him. From the New Orleans Pelicans perspective, the Zion Williamson experiment has been an unmitigated disaster. They won the lottery in 2019 expecting to get a franchise-altering superstar who would lead them to playoff success and potentially a championship. Instead, they've gotten a player who's been available for less than half their games, has generated constant negative headlines, and has shown questionable commitment to his craft. The team has bent over backwards to accommodate Zion, from hiring specific trainers to adjusting their entire offensive system around his unique skill set. The weight clause in his contract shows just how concerned the organization was about his professionalism, and the fact they've had to repeatedly address his conditioning publicly suggests those concerns were well-founded. Now they're facing a brutal decision. Do they continue to invest in a player who has shown he can't stay healthy or committed, or do they cut their losses and try to trade him while he still has some value? The problem is that Zion Zion's trade value is at an all-time low. Think about it for a second. The Los Angeles Lakers were able to get Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris in return for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a 2029 first-round pick, and a 2025 second-round pick. And Luka Doncic, although
What's up, everyone? I'm Dricus du Plessis, UFC middleweight champion of the
She admitted that she doesn't know when the injury happened, but it's different from the injury that sidelined her during the preseason.
Great opportunity for our team to find an identity. It's a great opportunity for our team to play in a different way.
The Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark Part 2 will have to wait.
what I'm about to reveal is not about just one player getting hurt. This is about how the WNBA's failure to protect their golden goose might have just cost them everything they've been building toward. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to be asking the same exact question I am. Did the WNBA create the very problem that's now threatening to destroy them? But first, let me paint you a picture that's about to get completely shattered. Just a few days ago, Caitlin Clark wasn't just the MVP favorite, she was the face of women's basketball, having what looked like a legendary season. And the biggest matchup in women's sports was just 2 weeks away. Keep that in mind because what happened on Monday changed absolutely everything. But before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest basketball news to your device. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. For Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals, we're getting another free square from Prize Picks. Anthony Edwards just needs 1 point for the square to cash, so I paired him with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Paul Skeens, and Jalen Williams for an opportunity to 4.5x our money. All you have to do to make this play is download Prize Picks and use my promo code MICROPHONE to get a free $50 when you make a deposit of $5 or more. On top of that, I've been hitting more consistently each and every day, primarily because of my brand new partnership with Fantasy Aces. They have the best plays to give you an edge each and every day, and I'm going to leave a link to their Discord server in the description down below as well. And thank you, Prize Picks, for today's sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? When the Indiana Fever announced that Caitlin Clark would miss at least 2 weeks with a left quad strain, it wasn't just another injury report, it was the sound of millions of dollars walking out of the door, championship dreams crashing down, and the most anticipated rivalry rematch in women's basketball getting put on ice. And here's the kicker that's going to blow your mind by the end of this video. This injury was completely preventable. Hell, if you go to my content last year, I was warning about it for months and months and months. But stick around because I'm about to show you exactly how the WNBA's systematic failure to protect their biggest star led to this moment, and why the consequences could be catastrophic for the entire league. Let me take you back to where we were just days ago, because Caitlin Clark wasn't just playing well in her second season, she was straight up rewriting the MVP conversation in real time. Through her first 4 games, she was averaging 19 points and a league-leading 9.3 assists, shooting over 40% from the field while orchestrating an Indiana offense that looked completely transformed from the mess we saw in her rookie year. This wasn't the same Caitlin Clark who struggled early in her rookie season. This was a player who had spent the entire offseason grinding in the gym at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, showing up at 8 a.m. every single day, regardless of whether she was hanging with Taylor Swift at Chiefs games or attending the Masters. Fever GM Amber Cox told ESPN that regardless of where Clark was or what event she was attending, she was almost always back in the gym by 8 a.m. The work was showing, and it was really beautiful to watch. The season opener against Chicago was nothing short of a masterpiece. Clark dropped a triple-double with 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists, plus a career-high 4 blocks. As the Fever absolutely demolished Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky 93-58. Caitlin Clark looked unstoppable, and more importantly, she looked like she was having fun doing it while sending a clear message that this year was going to be different. But here's where this story takes a dark turn that nobody saw coming. Clark was the MVP favorite heading into this season at minus 115 odds, meaning Vegas believed she was more likely than not to win the award. After that dominant opener, some sportsbooks had her as high as the plus 195 favorite. This wasn't just hype, this was legitimate recognition that Caitlin Clark had taken another massive massive leap as a player. And then Monday happened and everything changed in an instant. Before I tell you about the bomb that was dropped on Monday, you need to understand the full context of what's at stake here. Because this injury doesn't just affect Caitlin Clark, it completely derails the most compelling rivalry in women's sports. One that started with a gesture that had the entire basketball world talking. The Clark-Reese rivalry didn't begin in the WNBA. It traces back to their AAU days when they first faced off against each other in a championship game, but it exploded onto the national stage on April 2nd, 2023, when LSU faced Iowa in the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship game. That night in Dallas, Angel Reese's LSU Tigers demolished Clark's Iowa Hawkeyes 102-85 in front of 9.9 million viewers, making it the most watched women's college basketball game in history at the time. But it wasn't the score that had people talking. With LSU pulling away in the fourth quarter, Angel Reese turned toward Clark and flashed the John Cena "you can't see me" gesture, then pointed to her ring finger as if to say, "Where's your championship ring?" The image went viral instantly, with Reese saying she was willing to be the bad guy if it meant growing women's basketball.
I think so many people are watching women's basketball right now. It all started from the national championship game. I'll take that role. I'll take the bad guy role, and I'll continue to take that on. And I know I'll go down in history. I'll look back in 20 years and be like, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person. It's because of me too, and I want y'all to realize that.
But here's what made it spicier. Clark had used the same gesture earlier in the tournament against Louisville, so Reese was essentially throwing it right back at her. The basketball world lost its mind, with debates raging about sportsmanship, trash talk, and what this meant for women's basketball. But the story was far from over. Both players returned for their senior seasons, setting up what everyone knew would be an inevitable rematch, and boy, did that rematch deliver. On April 1st, 2024, in the Elite Eight, Iowa got their revenge. Clark dropped 41 points to lead the Hawkeyes past LSU 94-87, sending them to the Final Four while ending Reese's college career. The game drew 12.3 million viewers, shattering the previous record and making it the most watched women's college basketball game ever. After the game, there was a moment of mutual respect between the rivals. Clark told Reese to continue to be a great player, and Reese responded the same way. LSU coach Kim Mulkey even joked to Clark,
"I said, I sure am glad you leaving."
Both players had made it clear throughout their college careers that the rivalry wasn't personal. As Reese put it, "Me and Caitlin Clark don't hate each other. I want everybody to understand that." Clark echoed similar sentiments, saying they could be competitive on the court and still be cool after. But when both players declared for the WNBA draft, everyone knew this rivalry was just getting started. Clark got selected first overall by Indiana, while Reese went 7th to Chicago, setting up what would be the most watched rivalry in WNBA history. They faced off 4 times in their rookie season, with the Fever winning 3 of those matchups. But these weren't just basketball games, they were cultural events. Every time these two stepped on the court together, the ratings went through the roof. Their matchups consistently drew the highest viewership numbers for the WNBA, with their most recent meeting setting an ESPN record with viewership peaking at 3.1 million. But here's where things get complicated, and where you start to see the seeds of the disaster that would eventually strike. Because while Clark and Reese maintained that their rivalry was just competitive basketball, the intensity on the court was reaching levels that made people uncomfortable. And it didn't always necessarily have something to do with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. I mean, Caitlin Clark was getting absolutely destroyed whenever she would step foot on a basketball court. And for some reason, the WNBA opted to not have Caitlin Clark play in the Olympics, even though she was clearly the biggest draw in women's basketball. But most recently, on May 17, 2025, in their season opener, Clark committed a flagrant foul on Angel Reese during the third quarter, slapping her arm hard enough to knock her to the floor. Reese immediately got up and tried to confront Clark before Indiana's Aaliyah Boston stepped between them. The refs upgraded Clark's foul to a flagrant one after review. While both Reese and Boston received technical fouls for the aftermath, Clark insisted it was just a take foul to prevent an easy basket, saying this:
"I wasn't trying to do anything malicious. That's not the type of player I am, so."
Reese kept her response simple.
Basketball player,
though she was clearly pretty pissed off about the contact. But here's what made this incident particularly concerning. The WNBA announced they were investigating hateful fan comments directed at Reese during the game. The league's statement was clear. The WNBA strongly condemns racism, hate, and discrimination in all forms, and they have no place in our league or in society. I don't think that's a bold take at all whatsoever. Call me crazy, but I actually agree. But this is where you start to see the bigger picture emerging. The rivalry that was supposed to be great for women's basketball basketball was starting to bring out some ugly elements that neither player wanted or deserved. But wait, because there's way more to the story that you need to know about, because the Clark Reese incidents weren't the only sign that something was seriously wrong with how the league was handling physical play against its biggest star. Remember what I said earlier about this injury being preventable? Well, here's where the story really begins. And it's gonna make you furious when you see how obvious the warning signs were. Let me take you back to June 1st, 2024, when the WNBA had their most clear-cut example of what was happening to Caitlin Clark, and they chose to look the other way when Chicago Sky guard Kennedy Carter body-checked Clark away from the ball in what looked more like a hockey check than a basketball play. Carter had just scored a basket that, as the Fever were trying to inbound the ball, she lowered her shoulder and gave Clark a hip check that sent her sprawling to the floor. The refs called this a common foul. A common foul! Clark herself said this was not a basketball play, but somehow the officials thought it was just good hard basketball. It took the league office reviewing the play after the game to upgrade it to a flagrant one. But even then, Kennedy Carter wasn't fined or suspended. What made it worse was what happened on Chicago's bench. Angel Reese jumped off the bench and started clapping after watching Caitlin Clark get leveled. Think about that for a second. A player celebrating their opponent getting cheap-shotted away from the ball. Carter refused to answer any questions about Clark after the game, literally saying this:
I ain't answering no Caitlin Clark questions.
That's not competitive spirit, that's targeted harassment. And the league did essentially nothing about it. This wasn't an isolated incident either. Clark had been complaining about the physicality she was facing all season. Before that Carter incident, she told reporters, "I feel like I'm getting hammered," when discussing the level of contact she was dealing with. After the Carter hit, her response was even more telling. She said, "I feel like I'm just at the point where you accept it and don't retaliate. Just let them hit you. Be what it is. Don't let it get in your head and know it's coming." I think at this point, I know I'm just going to take a couple of hard shots a game, which is completely absurd to hear from the player that single-handedly transformed your league. This same person that is responsible for the economic growth of the WNBA was now telling you that she expected to get targeted with hard shots each and every game. And what does the WNBA do? Nothing meaningful to stop it. Now we're back to Monday, May 26, 2025, the day that changed everything. Clark's MVP odds plummeted from -115 to +210, while Minnesota's Nafisa Collier became the new favorite at -135. Just like that, months of preparation and what looked like a dominant start to her MVP campaign got derailed by what coach Stephanie White described as Clark reporting pain in her leg after their loss to New York. And here's what makes this injury absolutely devastating beyond just Clark missing games. The timing is brutal, because she's going to miss the June 7th matchup against the Chicago Sky and Angel Reese, a game that was moved from the Sky's usual home at Wintrust Arena to the United Center specifically because of the anticipated crowd for the Clark-Reese rivalry. Think about what that means. We're talking about a game that was supposed to air on CBS, featuring the two biggest names in women's basketball in one of the most iconic venues in all of sports. The game was expected to be one of the most watched WNBA games in the last 25 years, and now one half of that equation is watching from the sideline. Ticket prices for the June 7th game have already dropped from $86 to $25 after news of Clark's injury broke. That tells you everything you need to know about who people are really coming to see. But let's talk about the bigger picture here, because this injury exposes something that should have the WNBA panicking. Caitlin Clark isn't just the WNBA's biggest star, she is literally their entire business model right now. And the numbers are absolutely staggering. Clark was responsible for 26.5% of all of the WNBA's economic activity last season, including revenue from their merchandise, ticket sales, and television. That's not a star player, that's an entire economy walking around on two legs, and they just let her get hurt because they failed to protect her. The Fever played in all of the WNBA's 15 most watched games in 2024. They appeared in 19 of the 22 regular season games that drew at least 1 million viewers. When she got hurt, you had to go down to number 15 on the most watched games list to find one without the Fever. The attendance story is even crazier. The year before getting Caitlin Clark, when the Fever were struggling to a 13-27 record, they ranked second to last in the WNBA with an average attendance of 4,067 per game. Last season, they led the league with over 17,000 per game, becoming the first team in WNBA history to draw more than 300,000 100,000 fans in a season. That's a 300% increase, and it all happened just because one player showed up. But here's the most telling stat of all. Clark's nationally televised games averaged 1.18 million viewers, while all other WNBA games drew just 394,000. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. For every 3 people watching Clark, only 1 was watching everyone else combined. Now here's where I'm going to say something that might ruffle some feathers, but it needs to be said. The WNBA has failed to protect Caitlin Clark. In this